The first thing I noticed was the sound. Not the kind of sound you get in Antarctica, the howling wind, the groaning ice, the constant hum of generators that had become our white noise. This was different. It was a whispering, like voices just at the edge of hearing, coming from inside the walls. I'd been at the McMurdo Research Station for 3 weeks, tasked with monitoring the psychological well-being of the winter over crew. We were cut off from the world for 6 months, just 20 souls in a frozen wasteland. The isolation was supposed to be the biggest threat. We were wrong. It was 3:17 in the morning. I hadn't slept. Too much adrenaline, too many thoughts. I was lying in my bunk, reading the same research paper I'd read 3 times, hoping for something mindless to knock me out. But then the lights flickered once, twice, then again. Not the normal kind of flicker either. It was like a slow pulsing fade, on, off, on, dim, buzz. I sat up and looked around my small quarters. Everything was still, too. Still. That's when I realized something else was wrong. The air smelled off, like ozone, like the air after a lightning strike. That sharp metallic scent you only get for a second before the storm hits. Except there hadn't been a storm in weeks. Just the endless Antarctic night. I rubbed my eyes and stood up, thinking maybe I was just overtired. Maybe the wiring in the station was acting up. I walked over to the door and stepped into the corridor. The emergency lights cast long shadows down the empty hallway. I always found the station's architecture unsettling at night. Narrow passages, low ceilings, the feeling of being buried under miles of ice. But tonight, no sound, no movement, just the whispering that seemed to follow me. That's when I saw it. At the end of the corridor, near the entrance to the geology lab, there was a figure, but not like any figure I'd ever seen. It was too thin, too tall, like a shadow stretched by perspective. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It just stood there, a perfect silhouette against the dim emergency lighting. It looked like it had weight, like it was waiting. I pulled my phone out and took a quick photo. But when I looked at it right after, all I saw was static. The screen glitched like the signal was cutting in and out, then black. The photo didn't save. No error message, just gone. I frowned and backed into my room, shutting the door behind me. That's when the alert came through. My station-issued tablet buzzed hard on my desk. One of those high-priority emergency tones that make your stomach drop before you even read the words. It took over the screen. Emergency alert. Unexplained audio phenomenon detected throughout station. Do not investigate strange sounds. Abnormal behavior reported. Stay in quarters. Await official instructions. I just stared at the screen, rereading it over and over like it would change. It didn't say what it was, just that it was here and dangerous. My heart was already pounding, but now I felt cold all over. I tried to call Dr. Bill, the station commander. Nothing. Straight to voicemail. I tried again, but it wouldn't even ring. Just a dull call, failed notification. I stared at the floor for a second, trying to breathe, trying to think. Then I heard something from outside my door. I moved back and pulled the curtain just enough to peek out. Across the corridor, someone was standing alone in the middle of the hallway. A woman, barefoot in pajamas. She wasn't moving, just standing under the emergency light, like she'd wandered out of her room and forgotten why. "Hey," I called out without thinking and instantly regretted it. She didn't react at first. Then slowly, like it hurt to move, she turned her head toward me. I'll never forget her face because for a second I swear to God it wasn't hers. Her features shifted, warped, like her skin was stretching into something familiar. I saw my sister's face, my sister who died 5 years ago. I slammed the curtain shut, stumbled back, heart racing. I locked the door, double-checked it. Then I grabbed my phone again and called Lena. Lena always picked up. Chief biologist, rational as hell. The kind of person who documented everything and approached problems methodically. She answered on the second ring. "You hearing this?" she said. "Yeah," I breathed. "It's not just the wind. No, it's not moving with the ventilation system. It's too localized. You need to stay in your room. I'm heading to the command center. Find Ben and meet me there if you can. Ben's not answering. His tablet's off. I'll check on him. You just don't go investigating the sounds, no matter what you hear." What does that mean? But the line went dead. No static, just silence. I lowered the phone and stood there for a long moment, trying to get my head around what was happening. I kept thinking it's just like something was pressing in against the walls of my room listening. Act 1, establishing the setting and early unease. McMurdo Research Station wasn't much to look at from the outside. Just a cluster of utilitarian buildings half buried in snow, connected by enclosed walkways that rattled with every gust of wind. But inside, it was a marvel of modern engineering, designed to keep 20 researchers alive in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. We had laboratories, living quarters, a communal dining area, a small gym, and even a hydroponic garden that provided fresh vegetables and a touch of green in the endless white. I'd been stationed there as part of a new initiative to study the psychological effects of long-term isolation in extreme environments. My background in trauma and group dynamics made me an ideal candidate, or so the funding agency had said. The truth was, I needed the escape. My sister's death had left me adrift, and Antarctica seemed as far away from my grief as I could get. The crew was a mix of scientists and support staff, each chosen for their expertise and psychological resilience. Dr. Marcus Bill, the station commander, was a former astronaut with decades of experience in extreme situations. He ran the station with military precision, his calm demeanor a steadying presence for all of us. Dr. Lena Petrova, the chief biologist, was brilliant and methodical, with a curiosity that bordered on obsession when it came to microbial life in extreme conditions. Dr. Ben Carter, the geologist, was a skeptic who believed everything had a rational explanation. His gruff exterior hid a deep commitment to his work, studying ice core samples that held clues to Earth's climate history. And then there was Jamie, our youngest crew member at 22, a technician responsible for maintaining the station's electronic systems. Jamie had synesthesia, a neurological condition that caused them to perceive sounds as colors and textures. They described the station's normal hum as blue and smooth, while the howling wind outside was sharp and yellow. Their unique perspective had proven invaluable more than once when troubleshooting equipment issues. In those first few weeks, everything had been normal by Antarctic standards. We settled into our routines, adapting to the 24-hour darkness of winter. The isolation was challenging, but we had each other, and the work was fascinating. I conducted regular psychological check-ins with each crew member, documenting their mental states and watching for signs of stress or depression. Everyone was holding up well, better than expected. Then the whispers started. At first, they were barely noticeable, like the faintest murmur at the edge of hearing. Some crew members attributed it to the wind finding new ways to penetrate the station's insulation. Others thought it might be the metal structure contracting and expanding with the temperature changes. But Jamie described it differently. It's not like the other sounds, they told me during one of our sessions. It's purple, and it feels like velvet. But it's coming from inside the walls, not outside. I made a note of it, but didn't think much of it at the time. Jamie's perceptions were unique, and their descriptions often sounded poetic rather than literal. But then other crew members began to report similar experiences. Dr. Bill mentioned hearing what sounded like voices during his nightly rounds. Lena said she'd heard music coming from an empty laboratory. Ben dismissed it all as auditory hallucinations caused by sensory deprivation and suggested we increase our vitamin D intake. The emergency alert changed everything. After my unsettling experience in the corridor, I stayed in my room as instructed, my heart pounding every time I heard a sound from the hallway. The whispering seemed to grow louder, more distinct, as if whatever was making it knew I was listening. I could almost make out words, but they slid away before I could grasp them, like trying to remember a dream. When my tablet buzzed again an hour later, I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was a message from Lena. Meet in command center. Bring your recording equipment. I hesitated for only a moment before grabbing my audio recorder and noise-canceling headphones. The corridors were empty as I made my way to the command center, the emergency lights casting long shadows that seemed to move at the edge of my vision. The whispering followed me, growing louder as I approached the central hub of the station. The command center was a hive of activity when I arrived. Dr. Bill was coordinating with the few crew members who had reported for duty, his face grim. Lena was setting up audio equipment, her hands steady despite the tension in her shoulders. Ben was pacing, running a hand through his hair in frustration, and Jamie was curled in a corner, eyes closed, hands over their ears. "Evelyn, good," Dr. Bill said as I entered. "We need your expertise. Something is affecting the crew's perception." "What's happening?" I asked, setting up my recorder. "The whispers," Lena said, not looking up from her equipment. "Some crew members are reporting hallucinations." "Not hallucinations," Ben muttered. "There's a rational explanation for this. Probably some kind of acoustic phenomenon caused by ice movement or electromagnetic interference." "Then why can't we detect it with our equipment?" Lena shot back. "I've got microphones set up all over the station, and they're picking up nothing unusual." "Maybe your equipment isn't sensitive enough," Ben retorted. "Or maybe you're not looking in the right places." "Enough," Dr. Bill said, his voice quiet but firm. "We need to focus on keeping everyone calm and safe until we understand what's happening." I turned on my recorder, hoping to capture the whispers that had been haunting me. For a moment, there was only silence, the normal hum of the station's systems. Then it started, a low murmuring that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I adjusted the gain, trying to isolate the sound. "Can you hear that?" I asked. Lena nodded, her eyes fixed on her equipment. "But it's not registering on any of my sensors. It's not actually there." "It's purple," Jamie whispered, eyes still closed, "and it's getting darker, like a bruise." I listened intently, trying to make out words in the murmuring. For a moment, I thought I heard my name, but when I focused on it, it dissolved into meaningless sounds. "It's adapting," I said, more to myself than to the others. "To our attention." "What do you mean?" Dr. Bill asked. "The whispers," I explained. "They change when we focus on them, like they're responding to us." "That's impossible," Ben said. "Sounds don't just adapt to listeners." "These seem to," Lena said quietly. "I've been documenting changes in frequency and amplitude that don't follow any known acoustic patterns." We worked in silence for the next hour, trying to capture and analyze the mysterious sounds. The more we focused on them, the more distinct they became, until I could almost make out individual voices. Some sounded familiar, like crew members I knew. Others were completely alien, speaking in languages I couldn't identify. "I need to check on the other crew members," Dr. Bill said finally. "We need to account for everyone." "I'll go with you," Ben offered. "Someone should stay here and monitor the equipment," Lena said. "Jamie and I can handle that." "Evelyn?" Dr. Bill looked at me questioningly. "I'll stay with Lena," I said. "I want to run some psychological tests if the sounds return." Dr. Bill nodded. "Keep me updated, and remember, don't investigate alone. If you hear anything unusual, report it immediately." After they left, Lena, Jamie, and I continued our work. The whispers had faded to a background murmur barely noticeable over the station's normal sounds. Jamie had removed their hands from their ears and was now sketching in a notebook, their brow furrowed in concentration. "What are you drawing?" I asked, moving closer. "The sound," they said, showing me their sketch. It was a swirl of colors, deep purples and blues mixed with streaks of red and yellow. "It's changing, getting more complex." "Can you describe it?" Lena asked, leaning over Jamie's shoulder. "It's like threads," Jamie said, pointing to different parts of their drawing. "Each thread is a different voice, but they're all woven together, and some of them are hungry." "Hungry," I repeated. "How can a sound be hungry?" "Not the sound," Jamie clarified. "Whatever is making the sound, it wants something." "What does it want?" Lena pressed. Jamie shook their head. "I don't know, but it's getting stronger, and it's learning." A chill ran down my spine. "Learning what? How to get to us?" Jamie whispered. The next few days followed a similar pattern. The whispers would come and go, sometimes barely noticeable, other times so loud they made it difficult to think. Crew members reported increasingly strange experiences, seeing movement out of the corner of their eyes, hearing their names called when no one was there, finding objects moved or missing. Dr. Bill instituted a buddy system, requiring everyone to move through the station in pairs. He also ordered all non-essential areas sealed off, limiting our living space to the central hub of the station. The atmosphere grew tense, the isolation that had once been merely uncomfortable, now feeling oppressive. I continued my psychological evaluations, noting a marked increase in anxiety and paranoia among the crew. Even Ben, the skeptic, was showing signs of stress, his usual rational explanations becoming more strained. There has to be a scientific explanation for this, he insisted during one of our sessions. Some kind of infrasound or electromagnetic phenomenon affecting our brains. Maybe, I said, making a note. But infrasound doesn't usually manifest as distinct voices. Then what? Ghosts? He scoffed, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. I don't know, I admitted, but we need to keep an open mind. The turning point came a week after the first emergency alert. Emergency lights flickered on a moment later, casting eerie shadows across the room. System failure, Dr. Bill said, his voice calm. Backup generators should kick in any moment. But they didn't. The emergency lights continued to flicker, growing dimmer by the second. And then the whispers started, louder than ever before, a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Stay together, Dr. Bill commanded, moving to the center of the room. Everyone, stay calm. But calm was impossible. The voices grew louder, more distinct, and I could make out words now, whispers of promises and threats, of memories and desires. I heard my sister's voice among them, calling my name, telling me she was waiting for me. Evelyn, Lena said, grabbing my arm. Are you okay? I shook my head, trying to clear it. I heard her, my sister. It's not real, Lena said firmly. Whatever this is, it's using our memories against us. How do you know? I asked, my voice trembling. Because I'm hearing my father, she said, her own voice unsteady. He died 10 years ago. Around us, other crew members were reacting similarly, some calling out to people who weren't there, others curling into themselves, hands over their ears. Jamie was the only one who seemed unaffected. Their eyes closed, deshpe, fingers pressed to their temples. The threads, they murmured. They're trying to unravel us. What do we do? I asked Lena. We need to get to the command center, she said. Find a way to stop this. But before we could move, the emergency lights failed completely, plunging us into darkness. And in that darkness, the whispers became screams. It lasted only a few seconds before the main power suddenly surged back on, flooding the dining hall with harsh fluorescent light. The whispers stopped as abruptly as they had begun, leaving behind a ringing silence that was somehow more unsettling than the noise itself. Crew members blinked at each other, dazed and confused, some with tears streaking their faces, others looking around as if they weren't sure where they were. Is everyone okay? Dr. Bill asked, his voice steady despite the pallor of his face. A chorus of shaky affirmatives answered him. What the hell was that? Ben demanded, running a hand through his hair. System malfunction? More than that, Lena said, her eyes wide. Did you all hear voices? Nods and murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Specific voices, I added. People we've lost. Or never knew, Jamie said quietly. Some of them weren't human. A chill ran through me at their words. What do you mean, not human? Some of the threads, they're old, Jamie explained. Older than us. Older than the station. We need to get to the bottom of this, Dr. Bill said, his jaw set with determination. Lena, Evelyn, Jamie, with me. Ben, can you check the power systems? See if you can find what caused the outage. On it, Ben said, already heading for the door. The rest of the crew dispersed to their assigned duties, moving in pairs as ordered. Dr. Bill, Lena, Jamie, and I made our way to the command center, our footsteps echoing in the suddenly silent corridors. The normal hum of the station seemed louder now, as if compensating for the absence of the whispers. Jamie, Dr. Bill said as we walked, you mentioned that some of the voices weren't human. Can you elaborate on that? Jamie frowned, concentrating. They felt different, older, like the sound of glaciers moving but with intention, and they were hungry, not for food, but for something else, for experiences, maybe, for memories. That's consistent with what others reported, I said. The voices seemed to know things about us, personal things. But how? Lena asked. How could something know our memories? I don't know, I admitted, but it's targeting our emotional vulnerabilities. My sister, your father. My wife, Dr. Bill said quietly. I heard Sarah's voice. She died in a climbing accident 3 years ago. We reached the command center and secured the door behind us. Lena immediately began checking her equipment, while Jamie pulled out their sketchbook and began drawing, their brow furrowed in concentration. I'm not picking up any unusual audio signatures, Lena said after a few minutes. Whatever caused that phenomenon, it's not leaving any trace. Or it's masking itself, I suggested, adapting to our detection methods. Like it adapted to our attention earlier, Dr. Bill mused. This thing, whatever it is, seems to be learning from us. Learning how to affect us more effectively, I added. That's why the experiences are getting more intense, more personal. But what is it? Lena asked, frustration evident in her voice. Some kind of psychic phenomenon, a collective hallucination, or something that was already here, Jamie said, looking up from their drawing. We all turned to look at them. What do you mean? Dr. Bill asked. The ice, Jamie said, tapping their drawing. It's not just ice. There's something in it. Something old. And the drilling, we woke it up. The ice core drilling? Ben asked, entering the command center. What about it? Jamie thinks we might have disturbed something in the ice, Dr. Bill explained. Something that's now affecting the station. Ben scoffed. That's ridiculous. We've been drilling ice cores for decades without any issues. Not this deep, Jamie insisted. And not in this location. The seismic surveys showed unusual readings beneath the ice shelf. Remember? Ben frowned. There were some anomalous readings, but we attributed them to geological formations. What if they weren't? I asked. What if there was something else down there? Like what? Ben challenged. An ancient civilization? Frozen aliens? I don't know, I admitted, but something is happening, and it started around the same time as the deep drilling operations. Coincidence, Ben said, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. Is it? Lena asked, turning to her computer. Let me check the timeline. She pulled up the station's activity logs, scrolling through entries from the past few weeks. The first reports of unusual sounds came 3 days after we reached the maximum depth in the drilling operation, and the intensity has increased as we continued to extract samples. That doesn't prove causation, Ben argued. No, I agreed, but it's a correlation we can't ignore. Especially given Jamie's perceptions, Dr. Bill added. Their synesthesia gives them a unique perspective on what we're experiencing. So what do we do? Ben asked, throwing up his hands. Stop the drilling? Pack up and go home? We're 6 months into a 12-month mission. We can't just leave. I'm not suggesting we abandon the mission, Dr. Bill said, but we need to understand what we're dealing with. Lena, can you analyze the ice core samples we've collected? Look for anything unusual. Already on it, Lena said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I'll run a full spectrographic analysis and check for any anomalous materials. Jamie, Dr. Bill continued, I want you to continue monitoring the sounds. Try to identify patterns or changes. Your unique perception might be our best early warning system. Jamie nodded. I can do that. Evelyn, Dr. Bill turned to me. I need you to continue psychological evaluations. Try to identify any common factors in the crew's experiences, and keep a close eye on everyone's mental state. This phenomenon seems to feed on emotional vulnerability. Understood, I said. What about me? Ben asked. I need you to double-check all our systems. Dr. Bill said, power, life support, communications, make sure there are no technical explanations for what we're experiencing, and secure the drilling equipment. No more samples until we understand what's happening. Ben nodded, though he still looked skeptical. I'll get right on it. The next few days were a blur of activity and escalating strangeness. The whispers continued to plague us, growing more sophisticated in their attempts to manipulate us. They no longer just spoke of lost loved ones, but began to promise us our deepest desires. Professional recognition, romantic fulfillment, answers to questions we'd long struggled with. Crew members found it increasingly difficult to resist these temptations. 2 researchers, Dr. Miller and Thompson, were found attempting to open an exterior door, claiming they heard colleagues outside who needed help. They couldn't explain how anyone could survive in the deadly Antarctic cold, but they were convinced it was real. It's like it knows our thoughts, Lena said during one of our strategy meetings. The more we think about something, the more it uses that against us. It's adapting to our psychological profiles, I added, learning what each of us responds to. But how? Ben asked, frustration evident in his voice. How can it know us so well? Maybe it's tapping into our subconscious somehow, I suggested, through our dreams, our idle thoughts, or through the ice itself, Jamie said quietly. We all turned to look at them. What do you mean? Dr. Bill asked. The ice cores, Jamie explained. The ones we've been studying. They're not just recording climate data. They're recording something else. Something that remembers. Remembers what? Lena asked. Everything, Jamie said simply. Dinner. Every thought, every emotion, every experience that's ever been near the ice. And now that we've brought it into the station, it's absorbing our memories too. That's impossible, Ben said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? I asked. Ice can preserve things for thousands of years. Who's to say it can't preserve something more than just physical evidence? If that's true, Dr. Bill said slowly, then we're dealing with something beyond our current understanding of science, something that's been dormant in the ice for who knows how long, and we've awakened it. And it's hungry, Jamie added. Hungry for experiences, for emotions, for life itself. The implications were staggering. If Jamie was right, we weren't just dealing with a strange acoustic phenomenon, but with some kind of ancient entity that fed on consciousness itself. No wonder it was targeting our emotional vulnerabilities. Those were the richest sources of psychic energy. We need to contain it, Dr. Bill said, his voice firm with resolve, before it consumes us all. How? Lena asked. If it's in the ice cores we've already collected, it's already spread throughout the station. Not necessarily, I said. It might need a focal point, a source of power. The drilling equipment, Ben realized. The main drill is still operational, powered by the station's geothermal taps. That could be it, Dr. Bill said. The entity might be using the drill as a conduit, drawing power from the geothermal system to amplify its effects. So we shut down the drill, Ben said. Cut off its power source. Easier said than done, Lena pointed out. The drill is designed to run continuously. Shutting it down requires a manual override at the drill site itself. Which is on the other side of the station, Dr. Bill said, through areas that are now heavily affected by the phenomenon. We'll need to go in pairs, I said, and we'll need some way to protect ourselves from its influence. Jamie, Dr. Bill said, turning to them, your unique perception might be able to help us navigate safely. Can you identify areas where the entity's influence is strongest? Jamie nodded. I can see it now, or hear it rather. It's like a web of purple threads throughout the station. Some areas are denser than others. Can you guide us to the drill site through the least affected areas? Lena asked. I think so, Jamie said. But it's learning. It knows what I'm doing. It might try to stop us. Then we need to move quickly, Dr. Bill said, before it adapts to our plan. We spent the next few hours preparing for our mission to the drill site. Ben rigged a portable power generator to keep the station's essential systems running if we had to shut down the main power. Lena assembled a kit of scientific instruments to monitor the entity's activity. I prepared sedatives in case any of us became too affected by the phenomenon. And Jamie created a series of drawings, maps of the station showing the purple threads of the entity's influence, marking the safest path to the drill site. It's getting stronger, Jamie said as they worked. The threads are multiplying, spreading. How much time do you think we have? Dr. Bill asked. Jamie shook their head. Not much. Hours, maybe. It's almost fully integrated with the station's systems. Once that happens, they didn't need to finish the sentence. We all understood what was at stake. We set out just as the station's artificial night cycle began. The corridors were eerily quiet, the normal hum of the station seeming muted, subdued. Jamie led the way, their eyes half closed as they listened to the threads of the entity's influence. This way, they whispered, pointing down a side corridor. The threads are thinner here. We moved in pairs, Dr. Bill with Ben, Lena with me, Jamie just ahead of us, acting as our guide. The whispers started almost immediately, a low murmuring that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Ignore it, Dr. Bill said firmly. Focus on the mission. But it was hard to ignore. The voices seemed to know exactly what would tempt each of us. For Dr. Bill, it was his wife's voice, promising him they could be together again. For Ben, it was the voice of a mentor who had once questioned his theories, now admitting he was right all along. For Lena, it was her father's voice, offering her the approval she had always sought. And for me, it was my sister's voice, telling me that her death wasn't my fault, that I could finally be free of the guilt that had haunted me for years. Evelyn, Lena said, grabbing my arm as I stumbled. Stay with me. It's not real. I know, I said, shaking my head to clear it, but it sounds so real. That's how it gets you, she said, by offering you what you want most. We continued on, fighting against the increasingly persuasive whispers. Jamie seemed immune to their influence, their focus entirely on navigating the safest path through the station. Almost there, they said as we approached a heavy door marked, Drilling Operations Authorized Personnel Only. Ben stepped forward and entered the security code. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a cavernous space dominated by the massive drilling rig. The air was colder here, and the whispering was louder, more distinct. This is it, Dr. Bill said, the source of the entity's power. Now what? Ben asked. We shut it down, Dr. Bill said. There's a manual override switch on the main control panel. Ben, you and I will handle that. Lena, Evelyn, I need you to monitor the entity's activity. Let us know if shutting down the drill has any effect. What about me? Jamie asked. You're our early warning system, Dr. Bill said. If the entity tries to stop us, we need to know immediately. Jamie nodded and moved to a corner of the room, closing their eyes and focusing on their perception of the entity's influence. Doctor. Bill and Ben approached the control panel, their movements deliberate and cautious. Lena and I set up our monitoring equipment, our hands trembling slightly in the cold. It's stronger here, Lena said, adjusting her instruments. Much stronger. The threads are converging on the drill, Jamie confirmed. This is definitely the focal point. Dr. Bill took a deep breath. Ready, Ben? Ben nodded, his jaw set with determination. Ready. Together, they reached for the manual override switch. The whispers grew louder, more desperate, as if the entity knew what was about to happen. I heard my sister's voice one last time, pleading with me not to do this, promising me we could be together again if I just stopped them. Don't listen, Lena said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. It's lying. I nodded, clenching my fists to steady myself. Doctor, Bill and Ben threw the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the drill began to power down, its massive mechanisms grinding to a halt. The whispers rose to a scream, a cacophony of voices that seemed to shake the very walls of the station. The lights flickered wildly, and the temperature dropped suddenly, our breath forming clouds in the air. It's fighting back, Lena yelled over the noise. It's not giving up without a fight. The threads are going crazy, Jamie shouted. They're lashing out, trying to find new sources. Suddenly, the drill rig began to move on its own, the massive bit lowering toward the floor. It's trying to restart the drill, Ben yelled. We need to stop it. Dr. Bill and Ben rushed back to the control panel, but before they could reach it, a section of the ceiling collapsed, blocking their path. Dust and debris filled the air, and for a moment I thought we were done for. But then the whispers stopped abruptly, the silence as sudden and shocking as the noise had been. The lights stabilized, and the temperature began to rise. The drill rig froze in place, its bit inches from the floor. What happened? I asked, coughing in the dusty air. I don't know, Lena said, checking her instruments. The entity's activity just stopped, like it was turned off. The threads are receding, Jamie said, opening their eyes, going back into the ice. Did we do it? Ben asked, emerging from the dust with Dr. Bill. Did we stop it? I think so, Dr. Bill said, looking around the room. But at what cost? The drilling operation was destroyed, the equipment beyond repair. And as we looked around, we realized that something else had changed too. The station felt different, quieter, emptier. Where is everyone? I asked, suddenly realizing that the normal sounds of the station, the hum of the ventilation system, the distant clatter of equipment were absent. The other crew members, Dr. Bill said, his voice tight with concern. We need to find them. We made our way back through the station, our footsteps echoing in the unnatural silence. The corridors were empty, the doors to crew quarters standing open, revealing rooms that looked as if their occupants had left in a hurry. They're gone, Lena said, her voice hollow. All of them. But where could they have gone? Ben asked. Outside, in this weather, they wouldn't survive an hour. Not outside, Jamie said, their eyes distant. Into the ice. We all turned to look at them. What do you mean? Dr. Bill asked. The entity, Jamie explained. It couldn't keep its power source, so it took the next best thing. The crew members. It absorbed them into the ice. That's impossible, Ben said, but his voice was weak. Is it? I asked, thinking of all the strange things we'd experienced. If the entity can preserve memories in the ice, who's to say it can't preserve people too? But why? Lena asked. Or what would it want with them? Experiences, Jamie said. Emotions. Life. It's hungry for them, and now it has a feast. As if in response to Jamie's words, the whispers started again, faint at first, then growing louder. But this time, they sounded different. More distinct. More human. I could hear the voices of our missing crew members mixed with something older, something alien. And in those voices, I heard a promise that they would be back, that they would bring the ice with them, that we would all be together soon. We need to get out of here, Dr. Bill said, his voice urgent. Now. But how? Ben asked. The communications are down. The transport vehicles are buried under meters of snow. We're cut off from the world. There's one way, Lena said, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. The emergency escape pods. They're designed for just this kind of scenario. Will they work? I asked. They should, Lena said. They're independent of the main power systems, self-contained, enough to get us to the nearest research outpost. Then that's our plan, Dr. Bill said. We make for the escape pods. Now. We moved quickly, knowing that the entity was regaining its strength, that the whispers were growing stronger with each passing moment. The escape pods were located on the opposite side of the station, and as we made our way there, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They promised us everything we had ever wanted: love, success, answers, redemption. All we had to do was stay. All we had to do was join them. Don't listen, Dr. Bill said, his voice cutting through the noise. Focus on the mission. Focus on getting out. But it was hard. So hard. The whispers knew our deepest desires, our most secret fears. They offered us peace, resolution, an end to the pain and uncertainty that had defined our lives. For a moment, I almost gave in, almost turned back, almost surrendered to the promise of my sister's voice, telling me everything would be okay if I just stayed with her. Evelyn, Lena's voice cut through my reverie. Don't listen. It's not real. I shook my head, clearing the whispers from my mind. I'm here, I said. I'm with you. We reached the escape pod bay just as the whispers rose to a crescendo, a deafening chorus of voices that seemed to shake the very foundations of the station. The walls began to groan, the metal flexing as if under immense pressure. Hurry, Dr. Bill yelled, prying open the door to the first escape pod. Everyone in, now! We scrambled into the pod, sealing the door behind us, just as the corridor outside began to collapse. Through the small window, I watched as the station was consumed by ice, the metal groaning and buckling under the pressure until finally it was gone, buried under meters of snow and ice. Is everyone okay? Dr. Bill asked, his breath coming in ragged gasps. We nodded, too stunned to speak. Where are we going? Ben asked finally. To the nearest research outpost, Lena said, checking the pod's navigation system. About 50 kilometers east of here. Will they believe us? I asked. When we tell them what happened? I don't know, Dr. Bill admitted, but we have to try. We have to warn them. The escape pod roared to life, blasting through the ice and snow into the dark Antarctic sky. Below us, the ice stretched endlessly in every direction, a seemingly pristine wilderness that hid an ancient, hungry secret. And as we flew away, I could have sworn I heard the whispers one last time, faint but distinct, promising that we would meet again, that the ice would remember us, that it would come for us eventually. I shivered, pulling my blanket tighter around me, and tried to convince myself that it was just the cold, just the wind, just my imagination. But I knew better. I knew that somewhere beneath the ice, something ancient and hungry had awakened, and I knew that it was only a matter of time before it found a new way to feed. Act 3, Climax and Aftermath. The escape pod ride was rough and jarring, a stark contrast to the smooth, controlled environment of the research station. Each lurch and jolt reminded me of how precarious our situation was. 4 people in a small metal canister hurtling across one of the most hostile environments on Earth, fleeing from something we barely understood. ETA 30 minutes, Lena announced, her eyes fixed on the navigation screen. The outpost should be able to pick us up on their radar soon. Do you think they'll believe us? I asked, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me since we'd fled the station. They'll have to, Dr. Bill said grimly. The disappearance of an entire research station can't be ignored. They might try to explain it away, Ben countered. Equipment failure, accident, anything but the truth. What is the truth? I wondered aloud. Do we even know what we were dealing with? Something ancient, Jamie said quietly, their eyes distant. Something that's been dormant in the ice for thousands of years, maybe longer. And now it's awake, Lena added, and hungry. We fell silent, each lost in our own thoughts. The whispers had stopped once we'd left the vicinity of the station, but their echoes lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of what we had experienced and what we had lost. The other 16 crew members absorbed into the ice, their consciousness now part of the entity that had haunted us. The guilt was a physical weight in my chest. Should I have done more? Should I have tried to save them? But how could I fight something that could promise people their deepest desires, that could offer them peace and resolution? It wasn't your fault, Lena said, as if reading my thoughts. None of us could have known what we were dealing with. I should have recognized the signs earlier, I said. The psychological changes in the crew, the escalating strange experiences. We all missed it, Dr. Bill said. We were too focused on our research, too confident in our ability to handle whatever Antarctica threw at us. Arrogance, Ben muttered. Scientific arrogance. Thinking we can control nature, that there's nothing left to discover that would surprise us. Well, we were surprised, Jamie said softly. And now, 16 people are gone because of it. The escape pod landed with a jolt that threw us forward in our seats. For a moment, there was silence. Then the door hissed open, revealing a small team from the outpost, bundled against the cold, their faces etched with confusion and concern. Dr. Bill? One of them asked, peering into the pod. What happened? We lost contact with McMurdo hours ago. It's a long story, Dr. Bill said, climbing out of the pod, and you're not going to believe it. The outpost was smaller than McMurdo, just a handful of buildings housing a skeleton crew of researchers who maintained the automated weather stations and seismic monitors that dotted the Antarctic landscape. They welcomed us with a mixture of relief and suspicion, providing us with warm clothes, hot food, and a debriefing room where we could tell our story. So let me get this straight, Dr. Eris Thorne, the outpost commander, said when we had finished our account. You believe that some kind of ancient entity was awakened by your drilling operations, an entity that could manipulate perception and absorb human consciousness into the ice? I know how it sounds, Dr. Bill said, but that's what happened. Do you have any evidence? Physical proof of this entity's existence? The ice core samples, Lena said. They're still at the station, assuming the ice hasn't destroyed them. The station's gone, Dr. Thorne said flatly. Our satellites show nothing but ice where McMurdo used to be. It's as if it was never there. The entity must have covered it completely, Jamie said, absorbed it into the ice, just like it did with the crew members. Dr. Thorne rubbed his temples, a gesture of frustration and disbelief. This is extraordinary and deeply troubling. If what you're saying is true, then we're dealing with something beyond our current understanding of science. Beyond anyone's understanding, Ben added. Something that defies the laws of physics as we know them. We need to alert the authorities, Dr. Thorne said. The international research community. This affects more than just Antarctica. If this entity can spread, if it can find new hosts. It will, I said, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone. It's hungry, and it's learned how to feed. The next few days were a blur of activity and anxiety. Dr. Thorne contacted the Antarctic research authorities, who in turn notified their respective governments. We were interviewed countless times, our stories scrutinized for inconsistencies, our sanity questioned by skeptical scientists and military officials. Most found our account unbelievable, attributing our experiences to shared hallucination, carbon monoxide poisoning, or some other rational explanation. But a few listened. A few believed. Or at least, they believed that something had happened at McMurdo, something that couldn't be easily explained away. They're sending a team, Dr. Thorne told us a week after our arrival. Scientists, military personnel, specialists in unconventional phenomena. They want to investigate the site. It's too dangerous, Dr. Bill warned. The entity is still there, still active. It will consume anyone who gets too close. They're taking precautions, Dr. Thorne assured him. Specialized equipment, protective gear. They'll be prepared. No one can be prepared for this, Jamie said quietly. The entity adapts, it learns, it will find a way around any precautions we devise. We have to try, Doctor. We can't just leave it there, waiting to spread. He's right, Lena said. We need to understand what we're dealing with, find a way to contain it, or destroy it. Destroy it? Ben asked. How do you destroy something that exists in the ice? That can absorb human consciousness? I don't know, Lena admitted, but we have to try. The investigation team arrived 3 days later, a dozen specialists in white cold weather gear, carrying equipment I couldn't begin to understand. They listened to our accounts with professional detachment, asked precise questions, and made copious notes. Their leader, a stern woman with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, introduced herself as Dr. Elena Voronin, a specialist in extremophile organisms and unconventional biological phenomena. Your story is remarkable, she said after we had finished our account. But I need to see the site for myself, to understand what we're dealing with. It's too dangerous, I warned. The entity will try to manipulate you to show you what you want most. We're prepared for that, Dr. Voronin said calmly. Our equipment includes neural dampeners and perception filters designed to protect against psychic influence. Psychic influence? Ben scoffed. You believe us? I believe that something happened at McMurdo, Dr. Voronin said. Something that defies conventional explanation, and I believe that the key to understanding it lies in the ice itself. She and her team set out for the former site of McMurdo Station the next day, equipped with snowmobiles, ice-penetrating radar, and an array of scientific instruments. We watched them go with a mixture of hope and dread, knowing that they were walking into the same danger that had consumed our colleagues. They'll be careful, Dr. Thorne assured us. They know the risks. But they don't understand the entity, Jamie said, their eyes distant. They think of it as a phenomenon to be studied, not as a predator that hunts. We waited anxiously for news, our nerves fraying with each passing hour. The outpost felt smaller, more confined, as if the walls were closing in around us. I found myself jumping at every sound, every whisper of the wind outside, wondering if the entity had found us, if it was coming for us next. It's just the wind, Lena said, noticing my tension. It can't reach us here. Can't it? I asked. If it can absorb an entire research station, what's to stop it from absorbing this outpost too? The distance, Ben said. The entity seems to be localized, tied to the ice where it was awakened. For now, Jamie added ominously. The call came 2 days later, crackling over the satellite phone with static that made it difficult to hear. This is Voronin, a voice said, strained and breathless. We've reached the site, or what's left of it. What did you find? Dr. Thorne asked, his voice tight with tension. Ice, Dr. Voronin said. Nothing but ice. No sign of the station, no debris, no bodies, just ice. And the entity, Dr. Bill pressed. It's here, Dr. Voronin said, her voice dropping to a whisper. We can feel it, watching us, waiting. Did you bring the equipment we discussed? Lena asked. The neural dampeners? Yes, Dr. Voronin said. They're helping, but it's strong. Stronger than we anticipated. It's been learning, adapting. It knows we're here. You need to leave, Dr. Bill said urgently. Evacuate immediately. We can't, Dr. Voronin said. Not yet. We need to gather more data to understand what we're dealing with. It's too dangerous, I insisted. It will consume you, just like it did the others. We have to try, Dr. Voronin said. For the sake of everyone, if this entity escapes Antarctica. She didn't need to finish the sentence. We all understood the implications. An entity that could manipulate perception, absorb human consciousness, and adapt to any countermeasures we devised would be unstoppable if it reached populated areas. Be careful, Dr. Thorne said finally, and keep us updated. We will, Dr. Voronin promised. Voronin out. The line went dead, leaving us in a silence that felt heavier than before. They're not going to make it, Jamie said quietly. The entity is too strong, too hungry. We have to help them, Lena said. Somehow. How? Ben asked. We're stuck here miles away with no way to reach them. There might be a way, Dr. Bill said slowly, his brow furrowed in thought. Jamie, you said the entity communicates through sound, through whispers that only you can fully perceive because of your synesthesia. Jamie nodded. That's right, the purple threads. What if we could disrupt those threads? Dr. Bill continued. Create a counterfrequency that would interfere with the entity's ability to communicate, to manipulate perception? It might work, Lena said, her eyes lighting up with scientific excitement. If we could identify the frequency range of the entity's communication, we could design a jamming signal. But we'd need to get close enough to measure it, Ben pointed out. Too close. Not necessarily, I said, an idea forming in my mind. Jamie, can you perceive the entity from this distance? Jamie closed their eyes, concentrating. Faintly, like a distant echo of purple. But it's there. If Jamie can perceive it, then we can use their perception as a baseline, I explained. Lena, you could design equipment to measure the neurological effects of Jamie's perception, identify the frequency range, and develop a countersignal. It might work, Lena said, already pulling out her laptop. So it's a long shot, but it's worth a try. We'll need to move quickly, Dr. Bill said, before Veronin's team runs out of time. The next 48 hours were a blur of scientific activity. Lena worked tirelessly, designing and building a device that could measure and counteract the entity's influence. Jamie served as the calibration point, their unique perception guiding Lena's adjustments. Dr. Bill coordinated with the outpost's communication team, trying to maintain contact with Veronin's team as they ventured deeper into the entity's territory. Ben and I assisted where we could, running tests, monitoring equipment, and trying to stay out of the way. It's almost ready, Lena announced on the second day, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep but bright with excitement. The counter-frequency generator. It should disrupt the entity's ability to communicate, to manipulate perception. Will it be enough to save Veronin's team? Dr. Bill asked. I don't know, Lena admitted, but it's the best chance we have. We need to get it to them, I said. But how? Ben asked. We can't just walk into the entity's territory. The escape pods, Dr. Bill said suddenly. We still have 2 functional pods. We could fly one to Veronin's location, deliver the device, and extract her team. It's risky, Ben warned. The entity will know we're coming. It will try to stop us. We have to try, Dr. Bill insisted. We can't just leave them there. I'll go, I said, surprising myself with my own courage. I know the risks, but I can't let more people die because we were too afraid to act. I'll go too, Lena said. I built the device. I need to be there to make sure it works properly. And me, Jamie added. I can navigate us through the safest paths, avoid the densest concentrations of the entity's influence. I'll stay here, Ben said. Coordinate with Dr. Thorne, maintain communications. Someone needs to be here to guide us back. Dr. Bill nodded. It's settled then. We leave at first light. The flight to Veronin's location was tense and silent. Lena clutched the counter-frequency generator like a lifeline, her knuckles white with tension. Jamie sat in the co-pilot's seat, eyes closed, focusing on their perception of the entity's influence. I piloted the escape pod, my hands steady on the controls despite the fear churning in my stomach. We're getting close, Jamie said suddenly, opening their eyes. The purple threads are getting stronger, more concentrated. How close? I asked. Another 5 kilometers, Jamie said, maybe less. I'm picking up their signal, Lena said, adjusting her equipment. Veronin's team. They're still alive, for now. The entity is focusing on them, Jamie said, feeding on their fear, their confusion. It's growing stronger. We need to hurry, I said, pushing the pod to its maximum speed. We reached the coordinates where Veronin had established her base camp just as the Antarctic sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ice. The camp was a small cluster of tents and equipment, surrounded by a perimeter of scientific instruments that hummed and blinked with various lights. There's no one here, I said, scanning the camp through the pod's window. Where did they go? The ice, Jamie whispered, their eyes wide with fear. It's calling to them, drawing them in. We need to stop them, Lena said, already opening the pod's door, before it's too late. We stepped out onto the ice, the cold immediately biting through our protective gear. The counter-frequency generator whirred softly in Lena's hands, its lights blinking in a steady rhythm. This way, Jamie said, pointing toward a large ice formation that glowed with an eerie purple light in the fading sunlight. The entity is there, and so are they. We moved cautiously across the ice, our boots crunching in the silence. The whispers started almost immediately, faint at first, then growing louder as we approached the ice formation. I could hear Veronin's voice among them, along with the voices of her team, mixed with something older, something alien. Stay close, Lena warned, adjusting the generator's settings. The counter-frequency should protect us, but it's not perfect. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as we approached the ice formation. I could see figures moving within the ice, their forms distorted and blurry like reflections in water. Veronin and her team being absorbed into the entity, their consciousness becoming part of the ice. We need to get them out, I said, my heart pounding with fear and urgency. How? Lena asked. They're already partially integrated. If we try to pull them out, we might kill them. Then we disrupt the entity, Dr. Bill said. Break its hold on them. The generator, Lena said, holding it up. It needs to be closer to the source, to the heart of the entity. I'll do it, I said, reaching for the device. No, Lena said, pulling it away. I built it. I know how it works. I need to be the one to activate it. It's too dangerous, Dr. Bill warned. The entity will focus on you. Try to stop you. I have to try, Lena insisted. For them. For all of us. Before we could stop her, she ran toward the ice formation, the generator clutched in her hands. The whispers rose to a scream, a deafening chorus of voices that seemed to shake the very air around us. The ice began to glow with an intense purple light, and the figures within it seemed to reach out toward Lena, their forms shifting and changing. Lena! I yelled, starting after her. Don't! Jamie grabbed my arm, holding me back. It's too late. You can't help her now. I watched in horror as Lena reached the center of the ice formation and activated the generator. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and the purple light of the ice flickered and dimmed. The whispers cut off abruptly, replaced by a sound like shattering glass. The ice formation cracked and splintered, pieces breaking away and falling to the ground. And then silence, complete and utter silence. Lena stood in the center of the broken ice, the generator still humming in her hands. Veronin and her team lay on the ground around her, unconscious but alive. It worked, Jamie said, their voice filled with awe. She did it. We rushed forward, helping Veronin and her team to their feet, checking them for injuries. They were dazed and confused, but otherwise unharmed. What happened? Veronin asked, rubbing her temples. The entity. I started to explain, but then I turned to where Lena had been standing, but she was gone. In her place stood a figure made of ice, its features slowly shifting and changing, resolving into Lena's face, her expression peaceful, serene. Lena? I whispered, reaching out a hand. The ice figure smiled, and I heard Lena's voice in my mind, not through my ears, but directly in my thoughts. I'm okay, she said. I understand now. The entity isn't evil, it's just lonely. It's been alone in the ice for so long, waiting for someone to talk to. Lena, what are you saying? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm staying, she said, to keep it company, to keep it calm, to keep it from spreading. No, I said. Come back. We can find another way. There is no other way, she said. This is the only way to contain it, to protect everyone else. Lena, please. Take care of them, she said, her image beginning to fade. Take care of each other. And then she was gone, absorbed into the ice, her consciousness merging with the entity, becoming part of it. We stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of her sacrifice pressing down on us. She saved us, Veronin said finally, her voice thick with emotion. She saved everyone. At what cost? Ben asked, his voice raw with grief. She's gone, just like the others. Not gone, Jamie said quietly. Das, transformed. She's part of something bigger now, something ancient and powerful. And she's keeping it contained, Dr. Bill added, preventing it from spreading beyond this place. We need to leave, Veronin said, her voice regaining its professional calm, before the entity decides it wants more company. We helped her team back to the escape pod, our movements slow and heavy with grief. As we prepared to leave, I looked back at the ice formation, now just a broken, jagged mass of frozen water. But for a moment, I thought I saw Lena's face in the ice, smiling peacefully, content in her sacrifice. Goodbye, Lena, I whispered, and thank you. The flight back to the outpost was quiet, each of us lost in our own thoughts. Voronin and her team were recovering from their ordeal, but the memory of what they had experienced would stay with them forever. Dr. Bill was already planning how to report the incident, how to explain Lena's sacrifice without revealing the full truth of what had happened. Ben was silent, his grief palpable even in the small confines of the pod. And Jamie was different. Their synesthesia had somehow been amplified by their proximity to the entity. Their perception of the world forever changed. I can still feel her, they said quietly as we approached the outpost. Lena, she's there in the ice, watching over us, keeping the entity calm. Do you think she'll be able to contain it forever? I asked. I don't know, Jamie admitted, but she'll try. For us, for everyone. We landed at the outpost to a flurry of activity and questions. Veronen's team was whisked away for medical evaluation, while Dr. Bill, Ben, Jamie, and I were ushered into a debriefing room where we faced a panel of officials and scientists hungry for answers. They listened with a mixture of skepticism and awe, their expressions ranging from disbelief to grudging acceptance. So this entity, one of the scientists said, it's still out there, in the ice? Yes, Dr. Bill confirmed. Contained for now, thanks to Lena's sacrifice. And you believe it's a threat to global security? Potentially, Dr. Bill said. If it were to escape Antarctica to find new hosts, we'll need to establish a permanent monitoring station, the scientist said, making notes. Restricted access, continuous observation. And we need to leave the ice alone, Ben added. No more drilling, no more deep core samples. Whatever is down there, it's better left undisturbed. The scientist nodded. I think that can be arranged. In the end, they believed us, or at least, they believed enough of our story to take precautions. A permanent research outpost was established near the site of McMurdo Station, its mission to monitor the entity and ensure it remained contained. Drilling operations in Antarctica were severely restricted, with no new deep core samples approved. And Lena was remembered as a hero who gave her life to save her colleagues, to contain a threat that could have destroyed us all. Only the four of us, Dr. Bill, Ben, Jamie, and I, knew the full truth of what had happened. That Lena hadn't died, but had transformed, merging with the entity to keep it calm, to prevent it from spreading. That she was still out there, in the ice, watching over us. Do you think she's happy? I asked Jamie one night as we stood on the observation deck of the new outpost, watching the aurora dance across the Antarctic sky. She's part of something bigger now, something ancient and powerful, and she's not alone anymore. No, I said softly. I suppose she's not. We stood in silence for a long moment, watching the colors shift and change in the sky above. And in that moment, I thought I heard something, a faint whisper on the wind, a voice that sounded like Lena's, saying goodbye. Goodbye, Lena, I whispered back. And thank you. The wind picked up, carrying the whisper away, and I knew that somewhere in the ice, Lena was smiling, content in her sacrifice, watching over us all. And I knew that as long as she was there, keeping the entity calm, we would be safe. For now.